Okay, now comes the mandatory period of, I think we're live, I'm pretty sure. I'll believe it when I actually see it come up on my phone, but let's assume that we're live. Hello and welcome everyone. I am here for another kind of special edition with some guests. So I've got Brittany, Deaton, and Andrew Ngai. I realized I meant to ask you to double check how I'm supposed to pronounce your name before we started, and I totally forgot. So hopefully I didn't screw that up.
Got it right.
So let me just give you a quick introduction. If you follow my channel and you follow the world of competitive Excel, then you probably know who these people are. But so Andrew is the GOAT esports competitor. He has been the world Excel champion both of the last 2 years and won both of the sort of all-star ESPN battles, the one that just aired, which is the one we're sort of talking about now, and the one the year before that. He's also been the financial modeling world champion in the last year of Model Off, and been in the top 3 of the financial modeling World Cup every year since that's come along, including even in the first year when he missed one of the 4 rounds and still managed to come third, almost beat me after crushing me in the last round. I think, Andrew, you might be the most consistent individual in this format ever. Like it's kind of spooky that you're, across both the esports and the financial modeling, you're like never off the podium ever.
I mean, Lawrence is pretty consistent too, but
yeah, but there's something about the league format. It's a little easier to stay. I mean, he's also freaking awesome. Don't get me wrong, but like having been knocked out in round 3 of the Excel World Cup, both or the Excel World Championship, both of the last 2 years. I'm very familiar with the fact that there's a lot of luck of the draw in a 7-round single elimination tournament. So the fact that you've managed to survive that every time is still very impressive to me. So that's Andrew, and then Brittany is, if Andrew is the kind of long-standing GOAT of the format, then Brittany is the rising star, the disruptor, the greatest hope of humanity to disrupt Andrew if anybody is going to. So we'll talk a little bit about their first legendary head-to-head in a little bit, but just to give you a sense, last year in the Excel World Championship, Brittany, as an unseeded competitor, drew against Andrew in the semifinals, and no offense, Brittany, I don't think anyone thought you were going to beat him, and then you like so nearly did, like led with 1 minute to go, then lost the lead, then got it back again. I mean, anyway, I'll talk more about that later, but it was epic. And now having come second in this ESPN battle, I feel like that makes you the official front runner for who is going to bring the fight to Andrew in this year's competition.
We'll see.
Wow. So that's who I've got. So I guess the immediate prompt, other than, these are 2 interesting people who I want an excuse to talk to anyway, for getting this group together is the ESPN battle that just aired, I guess, Friday of last week. The new format, elimination format, very stressful. Somebody gets knocked out every 5 minutes. But Andrew and Brittany were the 1 and 2 in that. So let's start there. How was the experience for you guys?
Yeah, and you were number 3, so all 3 of us here got the crew.
Yep, shameful bronze.
You do downplay yourself a little bit there.
Well, yeah. I mean, my attempt at this one was a bit of a comedy of errors, but I limped my way to 3, quite distantly behind the 2 of you, but no complaints.
Yeah, I thought the format change was a lot of fun. I was definitely going into it thinking, hey, I just don't want to be one of the first ones knocked out, because I have not been performing well in the qualification rounds. I don't know if it's still just residual. Had my baby in February, how long I can sort of play that card. But for some reason, I'm just struggling this season. And so I was hoping to make it past the first couple of eliminations at least. And I thought it was a very interesting, different type of format that really kind of, highlight the importance of getting those points on the board very early on. Can't sit back and wait.
Yeah, especially the first elimination after 5 minutes, that was
quick.
that was scary. It's like, you spend 5 minutes reading the question, figuring out what's going on. It's like, all right, you're done, you're cut.
Yes. Do something.
I felt similar. There was so many different things to balance. Like, you don't want to get eliminated, you want to get some bonus points, but you can't spend all your time kind of worrying about those two things, because then you might not finish enough of the main questions, and in the end it kind of bites you in the end. So yeah, I think it was big, juggling of different priorities, and I think I tried to balance them, all three of those, a little bit. But yeah, if thinking back, I don't think it was the optimal strategy or anything like that. But it works. So
it did work. It did. I mean, honestly, it's like, I looked at the video on, I don't know if people know, but we recorded this in May, I think, or anyway, a good while back. And at the time, I didn't hear the commentators, didn't see what anybody else was doing, other than we could see the scoreboard out of the corner of my eye. It's like, oh, this isn't going well. But yeah, like, I was watching it on Friday when it came out, and it was like, at least for you, Andrew, it did seem to go quite kind of, okay, bonus, level 1, level 2, level 3. Like, did it feel like everything was going smoothly? Did it feel like there were more wobbles than I could see, or was it just
I
the day
think
when everything clicked?
this case did mostly click for me. There was one bonus question that I didn't get earlier on, and I'm not sure what happened with that one. I tried it again later, and then it kind of, I still wasn't sure, but then suddenly I got the tick against my name, so okay, that one's done. I wasn't too sure what happened with bonus number 2. But other than that, I'd say I got through, I think it was up to question 5 that I completed. Those 5 were pretty smooth. The hard bit for me was then question 6. Because of the way I had constructed my spreadsheet, and it was all getting a bit too messy, and then I had to put it all back together and combine all the different race cars to make question 6 work. That was a bit too much for me to deal with at the end. But it got me a lead that it was okay.
It's one of the interesting things about that format, right? Is like, part of the challenge with these questions has always been, if you want to get everything done, you probably need to build, one model that covers every case. But if you do that, you're not going to score any points for quite a while. And so, in the elimination format, that's like particularly discouraged.
I think even with this one, with how much content there was, definitely seemed like it was designed to make sure nobody could finish it all in that time frame.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think that Andrew and the team, not this Andrew, but Andrew Grigalianovich, the organizer, and his team, like, we're pretty good. But I think sometimes when they're planning these, especially the finals questions and things like that, they're like, all right, they can probably handle this, and then it's.
That was kind of how I approached it too. I think I probably did fairly similar to Andrew there, like trying to get in there and get those bonus points and then proceeding through it. I think that the bonus point, or the bonus structure in this case, was really interesting too, like how each one had fewer number of people who could get it. And so I was definitely diving in, trying to see maybe there's possibility I can help lock out someone on a couple of those later bonus ones. But I think it was the first 4, and then realized number 5, I think, is the one that relied on getting other questions right. So like,
that's right. That's right.
I have to wait and see if I can even get those questions. But I got stuck, like not bonus 3, but question 4 was where I really got stuck in that. Going back afterwards, it was not as complicated as I made it out to be, but just the trying to go through the different situations with the different dice, which was higher and lower, and somehow translating that to the turns. It all made sense and I sat down and did that one and got stuck for what felt like an eternity. So realized I was not going to be getting bonus 5. I could barely finish this question.
I think if I remember rightly, did you miss bonus 1 as well, right?
I just came back to it a little bit later. So I think
okay.
in my mind at the time it was, well, a lot of people can get bonus 1. I'm going to try to see if I can stick with 2 and 3. I'll bring it back up to make sure I remember what these bonus questions were. But I think it was like 1 and 4 were related. So I think I went through 2, 3, jumped back to 1, and then hit 4. And I think it's a really good thing I got 4 because I think Andrew and I think the 2 of us were the ones that got that one, and only 2 people could get it. So then that would have been the difference between our scores. I think I calculated out the other night.
So the funny thing is, at one point, I put in my answer for that, and it was, I don't remember what it was like. It was supposed to be 96,900, and I put in 96,600 or something like that because I had miscounted one person in the front row. And so like the guys sitting in the control room looked at my answer and were like, oh, Dim got bonus 4, marked it right. And then a minute later, we were like, wait a second, that's close, but it's not right. And then marked it wrong. Max told me he had they can like come in our ear and then like let us know what's going on. He like spoke to me to say, hey, sorry, you didn't actually get bonus 4, but I guess I had muted my my thing because I never heard him. I was like tearing my hair. I go, what's going on? I had it. I lost it. Yeah, there was just this, I don't know why nobody else seemed to have the same mental block as I did, but there was this one person sitting on the corner who I could not get in my head that they were in the front row, even though they obviously were. But like, I mean, because I saw it was like, I could see this was wrong on bonus 1, and I knew that it was going to stop me from getting bonus 4 right. And so like I came back to it like 3 separate times, tried it slightly different ways, tried like every time I missed that same person.
I feel like I somehow managed to not fall into that, but I was redoing the case later and trying to match back to my original answers and got it wrong in the redo. So I don't know. I guess I reversed that mental block and didn't have it in the case, but then did have it in the practice afterwards.
So, well, I mean, it's funny when you were saying earlier about not doing as well as you wanted to in the qualifier rounds, it's kind of made me think, well, you know how to bring the thunder when it counts, right?
I guess I hope so. I need to pick up the pace on some of these ones. Yeah.
I'm curious, how much do you guys use like dynamic arrays and the newer functions and that kind of stuff? Like, are you sort of mostly old school, or are you mostly kind of as cutting edge as you can be, or it's just somewhere in between?
Definitely somewhere in between. There's a few things I've started picking up. Like I do use a lot more dynamic arrays in places. I don't think I've gotten comfortable enough to whip out some of the Lambda stuff. Probably pretty close on a let function, but I don't know that I've quite found the reason. That's not where my head goes to first when I'm trying to solve a problem. But I have adopted for these competitions, definitely adopted more of the dynamic arrays. I picked up the data tables like very early on. Of course, that's not quite as new. And XLOOKUP has been around for a while, but I'd never really used it. I was very much an index match camp. And so like I picked up some of those specifically because they played a bigger role in these competitions. And the dynamic arrays are really cool. And I do use like the let functions. I pulled in some lambdas in practice, but I need a lot more practice, I think, before I'm comfortable trying to throw that into a competition.
Yeah, I think I'm similar. So I have gradually used a lot more of these newer functions. I used to be pretty old school. I don't know if you watched maybe my battles a year or 2 ago. They're pretty much index match everywhere. The only thing I really used was data table. But then afterwards, I guess in the past year, I guess I've just gotten a bit more familiar with the newer functions. I think, maybe in the past, the only newer functions that I really loved were like sort and unique or filter, like those 3. But these days, some of those other ones where the 2-column one is quite handy.
I saw you using that on the stream.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was a pretty neat way to do that particular question. I think you also used that in your solution video.
Yep.
But
yep.
I mean, I actually remembered that from one of your earlier videos when you said, oh, was something like, oh, if only I thought of that earlier or something. There was one of your earlier videos when we both didn't do it the most optimal way, and then I think you used to call them a similar concept, and then yeah, so that's where I picked that one up. But yeah, thank
So
you.
that's the danger of sharing all my secrets online.
Yeah.
My opponents
Yes,
are watching.
well, yeah, that's definitely how I've picked up some of the things early on. I think the data tables had not even entered into my knowledge until I saw it in some of the streams. I'm like, I need to figure out how to do that. Oh, it was a game changer. Uh, so much so.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it's
I
funny
did
what you
throw a 2-call in the competition recently. I do like the 2-call. I wish I had done a wrap rose or wrap call, one of those in the competition. I wouldn't have gotten stuck so bad on question 4.
Yep, yep. I had at some point I had a biro wrapped around a wrap rose or a bicall wrapped around a wrap calls or something like that to sort of merge the pairs of dice for any given round together. Yeah, I mean, I definitely know what you mean about, you know how some of them work, but you're not sure you want to bust them out in the competition. I definitely had like a good 6 months between the first time I figured out how to do a lambda and the first time that I would even consider doing it under competition pressure.
I think I've just started that 6-month journey. I know how it works. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
I
definitely
was going to say
not
that
using it
that
yet.
that doesn't quite give you time for Vegas. You might need to accelerate it a little bit.
Yeah.
Although it's funny, I have started to suspect lately. Oh, we might have lost Brittany. Hopefully, we'll get her back in a second. Yeah, I've started to suspect lately. I remember when I started my career, I was at the Boston Consulting Group as like a junior consultant, and I learned about what do you call them? About array formulas, like the old control shift enter ones,
Yeah.
and like went through this real curve of like the more familiar with them I became, the more I used them and the more great I thought they were and the more I used them. And then eventually at some point there was like a peak and a coming down off it where I was like, wow, I was using these things for like, because I didn't know that much Excel at the time. And so I was using them to kind of, plaster over every gap in my knowledge. Is like, well, I don't know the native function, but I can make something up with an array formula. And I've started to suspect that I'm around that point now with dynamic arrays where, you know, I'm like, I can do everything with dynamic arrays, but now I need to learn that that's probably not always the best thing to do, even though you can do everything with dynamic arrays.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I guess I had a bit of a similar phase with VBA. So at first, okay, there's these Excel functions, but if it can't do what I'm trying to do, oh, actually there's VBA, so I can just keep recording a macro and code everything up. And then I ended up just coding too much. And then I realized, okay, this is actually not good because VBA you can't undo. And no one can, it's hard for people to check my work. And yeah, if you accidentally, no, I guess the undo thing is actually pretty big because in real work, like if you run your macro and then it kind of messes up the rest of the spreadsheet, well, I guess you can close and reopen it, but it's not if you haven't saved your work for a while, then that's not great.
Yep. You definitely, I'm sure we've all had that kind of point early in your career where you haven't fully internalized the lack of undo. You break your only copy of something and give yourself like a whole day of work to recreate it from scratch.
Yeah, or you overload the system and cause the whole thing to crash without having saved.
Ooh, that sounds like an interesting story.
I think it's happened on
That
multiple
must have been a
occasions.
long night.
Yes. Not powerful enough work machines, I guess. Years ago.
Of course, of course. I mean, we're all, older and wiser now. We don't make mistakes anymore. So I feel like I can't get the two of you together without hearing the inside story of the epic matchup between the two of you. Just like for the benefit of people who didn't see it, I'll try to give you a little bit of a sense. So, normal kind of life in esports battles is, there's like someone figures out the first level and gets a bunch of points. Someone else figures out the first level and kind of catches up. Someone figures out the second level, someone catches up, and so on. The kind of amazing thing with this battle is that the lead reversed 8 different times over the course of the battle, and 6 of them were in the last minute. So going into the last minute, Brittany was ahead by, I don't know, so a decent chunk of points. It like finished one section that Andrew hadn't. Then in the last minute, Andrew got that section out, caught up. Brittany got something wrong, fell back down below him. Then Andrew got something wrong, fell below Brittany. Then Andrew fixed it, came back in the lead. Then Brittany fixed her thing, came back in the lead. And then literally with like 6 seconds to go, Andrew put in one more answer and went from whatever, like 2 points out of 1,000 behind to 3 points out of 1,000 ahead or something. It was like the most bizarre, like moving in step photo finish that has ever happened in one of these events. I'm kind of curious what it felt like from the inside for you two.
Well, I had no idea it was going on at the time. That was most interesting because I found out about all of this after the fact, that things have been bouncing. I don't think I was paying attention to the scores as I was just focused in on getting the questions right. I knew I was matching up against Andrew and I needed to, push things through as quickly as possible. So I was trying not to waste any attention there. So definitely didn't realize how exciting it was until after the fact, and people were talking, my friends, like, we had so many text messages going back and forth. People were yelling at the screen. I'm like, okay. Never would have expected that from an Excel competition, but I think kind of in it, of course, it was just kind of trying to chug through and move along. I know that the one I went backwards was, I think there's one question you had to put the word pass instead of a 0 or a blank or something. And I thought it was for that question. It was actually for the next question. So I'd gone through and replaced them with pass, and that dropped my score. And I was like, oh, wait, I got to the next question and realized I'd done that wrong. So I went back and reversed it back to what it was. It was just a small tweak to the logic. And so that was the back and forth in the moment that I didn't even, like, I knew I'd gotten it wrong and put it back. But it was so funny to learn afterwards that Andrew had a similar or different, I don't know, something where he'd gone backwards too.
Yeah, like within seconds. That was the really weird thing.
It's crazy.
I think it's probably a good thing for me that you weren't paying attention to the scoreboard, because I was. And if you were as well, I don't think I could have snuck ahead right at the last minute like that. I might just bring up that. Oh, I can't screen share. Okay, never mind.
Hang on. Let me see if I can. Advanced channel. I don't know. All participants can share. Yes. Okay. Right. Now, hopefully, you can share.
Yeah, let's try that. I think this is working. I might make it a bit bigger. So this was when it was 1 minute 23 left, and as you said, we were pretty close. And then all this time, I don't think I was yet looking at the scoreboard. So it kind of got to 108 left, and I was obviously behind, but I was very busy trying to solve, I think, the last question that I actually ended up getting, maybe question 4 or something. And then it got to this point when I pasted in the answers. So then it's like 603, 610. And that's when I realized, I was behind. I guess I always knew I was struggling with this case because I guess if you look at the final score, you'll see that I got quite a few wrong. I got level 1 wrong. I didn't realize I got level 1 wrong. I got a lot of level 3 wrong. I knew level 3 wasn't quite right because I had already picked up that I didn't get 4 points. But also throughout the whole question, it was a difficult case to fully understand.
It was a real doozy.
That tripped me up for a while, and then so that's why I wasn't actually that confident with level 4 either. So when I got to this point where it was 603, 610 and I was behind, I thought that, okay, I must have messed up something in level 4. And so I picked these 4 numbers that had 0 in it. And I thought, oh, maybe those are wrong because 0 is a funny answer. So that's why I selected them and just guessed something else. And I just put 100 in all of them. And then I saw my score go down. So then I realized, okay, no, 0 is correct. So let's undo all that. And then I also saw, okay, Brittany's score went down. And I thought, surely she's not going to, suddenly lose points. Like I expected her to find to get it back up to 610. But obviously if she didn't, then I kind of have the win if I'm at 603. But at this point I knew half a minute left, I still need something. But I don't have no idea what I can really do. And I think it was basically at this moment.
Did you go for the classic round between?
So I didn't. I probably should have, but it was because the next level is level 5. It's hard because I knew that I can't just go for ran between because all the marks are like it's I guess maybe if I had enough clear mind to sort of think it all through, I could have done ran between times 10 because I think all of the scores should be multiples of 10. But I felt like ran between. Yeah, I guess I just didn't really think of ran between in that moment. The first thing I thought of was just filling it with pass because in case pass is a legitimate answer for any of the questions when everyone refuses to bid, then maybe I'll get some points. But then in the end, I guess everyone kind of saw I just typed a 100 in that last cell, and then that was somehow correct. And at that point, I thought, okay, Brittany's still got a chance to guess something else to beat me again, but I'm just not gonna touch it because I'm ahead. And if I touch anything else, I might actually change a correct one into a wrong one. So let's just hope nothing changes for the next 5 seconds. And yeah, it was a crazy finish. But yeah.
Yeah, I expected to finish much further behind, so I was quite pleased with the turnout. There were 2 things I really kicked myself for afterwards because I knew that the ran between thing existed. I'd seen some other competitions. I made no attempt to fill in guesses, and I thought I had assumed what you had done was take the sample answer and just copied it down. And I was like, I could have at least done that. And I didn't even attempt. But the other thing that would have made a difference is I misinterpreted. I had done the work to do bonus question 1, and I completely misinterpreted. I had the right answer on the sheet, but I misinterpreted what my equation was going to give me. And I was actually looking for this like duplicate thing, and I thought I'd gotten it wrong because I had duplicates. And if I had actually just taken the 2 seconds when I went and solved bonus 1 to put that answer in, or even realize that it was the same card showing up over and over again, and that made sense, that would have given me, enough of an edge, but didn't realize it in the moment. But I think as soon as the thing ended, I realized it. I don't think I'd even left the room after the competition before I sat down and tried to figure out what I did wrong. And I said, I just need to translate it. So I was kicking myself for that.
I've experienced that. It's like you've done all the work, but the question isn't whatever. The question isn't what card is it? It's what round does the card come up or something. And it's all there, but it's not what you put in.
I even opened up my case today, and I still have the cells highlighted where I'm like 666. What I was doing was saying there's 6 instances of the card, and I was looking for the card that had the most instances. And I'm like, I even highlighted it in my troubleshooting. I'm like, oh, there's more than one. Like, must have gotten it wrong.
Oh man, it's funny. We've got Michael Jarman in the live chat, who was in the other semi-final at the same time as you guys. He said this case still haunts me. I don't find that hard to believe.
Well, I opened it up and saw cards. I was like, oh no, because those were always the hardest ones for me in practice. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way.
I feel the same way. It's like if it's poker, I kind of understand the rules, but anything else, like when it starts talking about trumps, and I'm just like, oh God, I don't know what's going on here.
Go fish.
It's interesting because in the commentary, I think they've mentioned that this game is played a bit more often in Australia and New Zealand. And I have heard of the game before, but I wasn't familiar with it enough. And so it actually, in one sense, it helped me because I know what a trump is. But in the other sense, it didn't help me and confused me a bit because this game, like the case, is actually not the full game. So what's in the case is how you set up the board, basically, so that you can play the game. You don't actually play the real game in this case. But I was thinking, okay, so the game, you kind of have to set things up, but then you got to, play there's something around how you play the game. And then it took me a while to figure that, actually, we don't care about any of that. We just want to do the bidding at the beginning. And I guess because the case has to simplify things as well, and so the way you really think through like how do I bid each each type of number and suit in real life is a bit different to how they've simplified it here. And so it was a bit, it wasn't actually helpful for me. But
I heard that
see,
from a friend who like plays actually plays 500, or was this was euchre, wasn't it? Who plays euchre a bunch. He was like, yeah, I was so confused. Like I was confused because I had no knowledge. He was confused because he had too much knowledge. I guess there's a sweet spot somewhere that's like just enough to skim the instructions and take their word for it and get on with it.
Yeah, I had no knowledge of this game. Did have familiar of what trumps were, like I get that, but the bidding logic and stuff, I'm not sure how reminiscent that is of the actual game, but that was definitely unusual for me.
I had never even heard of euchre before this case, but anyway. Oh, ooh, that's perfect timing. The Lorenzo in the chat just asked the question that was on my mind to ask you guys next, which is how do you think about practice? Like, do you train for this? If so, how? If not, how the hell do you do it?
Go ahead, Andrew.
I around the major competitions, so the main Excel World Championship at the end, I will train a little bit, like just do past cases. I guess I think of it a bit like an exam. So I think Brittany, you're an actuary as well, right? So I'm an actuary. We go through some pretty tough exams, and so I've got that mindset. The whole mindset of doing past papers before an exam and just practicing and that sort of thing. So I guess I've translated that over here where towards the main competition, I will do some practice cases. But I also don't want to spend too much time throughout the whole year, and it becomes a bit tiring if I practice for this as well as the financial modeling World Cup, like the financial stuff. And I don't want to kind of make it so much that it becomes quite tiring throughout the whole year. So I do find particular points in time where it's worth sharpening your skills a little bit and remembering that this is how data tables work and things like that. But these days I think it's quite like the practice comes from doing the road to Las Vegas. Each month we kind of have something already, so that helps me remember, because I remember last year when it got to the World Championship at the end, it's been quite a while since I've done these kind of fast-paced Excel esports style competitions, so that was when the practice did help. But
yeah, I think I definitely practiced a lot more last year for the competition, especially given that it was my first time through it. I'm still figuring it all out. So there's I think I got the whole set of past cases and was working through them. I even found some early this year that I hadn't quite gotten to. So there's a lot out there, but there's a lot of kind of working through those, some under time constraints and some not, just trying to figure out different methods for how to deal with the problems. Haven't been practicing as much as I should this year, which could be my problem with qualifying rounds. That could be the connection, but
I mean, it could also be the new child might have some small impact on your amount of sleep, amount of available energy, that kind of thing.
All the distractions. So but yeah, I mean, my opinion is like, I don't want this to feel like a chore either. I do this because it's fun and engaging, not because I feel a pressing need to. So if I'm not feeling it at night, then I don't. But I have had periods of time where I just enjoy, like every night I might pick up a new case and try to work through bits and pieces of it. I think I sat in the airport last year one time. I was like, nothing to do, pull out my laptop. Let's practice a bowling case, I think, and struggle with some of the logic. I disagree with some of their strike logic, but whatever, we worked through it.
It's funny, that bowling case, probably the same one, was what I was thinking of when Andrew was talking about knowing too much about a case. It was, yes. I think I had that problem with one of the bowling cases last year, where it was like, well, I know how a strike works, so I'm not going to read the instruction, but they actually had a slightly different versions, which, for all the right reasons, like to simplify things. But I was like, well, I'm just going to do it how a strike works, and oops, I got the answers wrong.
Yes, agreed.
We got some more action in the chat. Oz asks, after you've started a challenge, do you ever want to go back and review the video for clarification?
I'd say that has not come up for me. I think the written instructions tend to be what I drive towards, because I'm like, it's very definitive, it's there. And so far I haven't noticed anything in the video that's not been in those written instructions. So usually I kind of try to parse through and figure out those pieces of instruction. I might pull those over to my other tab so I can focus in on what's the new instruction, because of course a lot of the sequential questions will have something new that it adds in, or a pertinent piece to highlight. So no, haven't gone to back to the video like during a challenge, but have watched them after the fact.
That's actually something I noticed when I was watching the video from last Friday, was that like where you had set up a model specific for a level, you had copied the instructions, and I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that? That's very simple.
It's like, I just need it there in front of me. No more back and forth. That's wasting time. So
yeah, no, that
then,
makes total sense.
Yeah, and there's like so much text on the page too. Like just seeing the one or two lines that's pertinent can just break a mental block too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you guys do, like when something goes wrong? Do you tend to assume it's because you've kind of misinterpreted the logic and go back and read the instructions more? Do you tend to assume it's because you've got a formula wrong and go and kind of get into auditing mode? Or is it just, who knows, flail around, which is what I sometimes do?
Yes, it depends. Yeah. So if my answers just look wrong, it's like this error, this look wrong, there's like errors or something, then it's obviously that I've done something wrong. But maybe like last year's semi-final, where it's my answers kind of, it looked acceptable. Like there were card numbers and card suits. I guess they have to be, because you're only picking from numbers and suits anyway. But it doesn't look completely off where there's NAs or anything. So that's when I think maybe I got the logic wrong. But yeah, it's hard. I think yeah, I do. It's a bit of everything really. I don't know which one works better, but yeah. So if you guys have yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times I default to trying to go back and check the instructions. Usually there's a few lines that are pertinent. So I'm like, usually that's where I hit first, and then say, okay, do I agree that what I think I've put in the equations matches that? I think most of the time I find that there's something wrong with my logic, or just a nuance that I hadn't incorporated into my logic. But yeah. And I agree, like if something's throwing errors, usually, yeah, just jump right back to the formulas itself and bypass the instructions piece. But yeah, always try to go back.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I find I have a sort of pendulum swing over time, which is like, how much time do I spend reading the instructions? It's a little different. Like when you're on the live stream, they usually give it to us like a few minutes before. You can kind of skim through and be ready to kind of go at second one. But when it's just one of the qualifier rounds, like download the file, and the clock is already ticking in the time that you've like downloaded the file and opened it up and whatever. Like I feel like half the time I'm like, all right, I've got to get in action right away, and like I'll skim the instructions as briefly as I can and then kind of race through. And often the instructions are, just what's written at the top of section 1 is enough to solve section 1, and I kind of work my way through. And then every now and again that comes back and bites me in the ass completely, because there's some clarification in the main instructions that, or an explanation of a term or something that means that I just kind of drive full speed into a wall. And then I the next couple of times I'm like, I gotta really read the instructions, and I'm like, I wasted time on that. It's precious minutes.
Yeah, I feel like what I've seen so far is similar. It's like you don't need all of the instructions for those first few questions, but there are the exceptions. But for the most part, you kind of skim through all of it and then kind of read in depth the first couple paragraphs, and then add on and go back and refresh. Because I have to go back and refresh anyway when I get to those questions. So, try not to absorb too much and just focus in on getting those first few problems out the door.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, and definitely notice the difference between the live stream version and the non-live version, because there's many reasons why I prefer the live. And yeah, I don't like being on camera, but I like the extra time that we get to think about the case. I like the fact that if you make one mistake, you don't lose the whole question.
Yes, big fan.
I've lost, I've lost quite a chunks of questions in the past, just from that. I guess it's mainly those two things. But recently, I actually didn't realize that the video is available on those non-live versions, because I'm just used to that. Yeah, they use the same question and answer setup as the Financial Modeling World Cup. And so I'm used to just, okay, I click start quiz and then I go straight into it, download the file and all that. I didn't realize that in the instructions until the most recent time. There's actually a link to the video, so that's cool. So I can actually watch.
I think they only started that like a couple of rounds in this year. Because I don't
say, I thought it was always new there. Or I had missed it, but I think I've used that once where I was on with a few extra minutes. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna look at the video, pause it maybe a couple times throughout to get a little bit more of a glimpse at the case to come.
I think they might have started being a little more coy about, they used to have a bit of the video scrolling down. It's like hit pause. Oh, there's the level 2. Oh, there's the level 3 instructions.
Yeah.
But I noticed on the last one, because I was like, whatever, you've got a sort of 45-minute window to do 30 minutes. So I was kind of there right at the start so that I could look at the video and spend 10 or 15 minutes thinking and strategizing and maybe writing some lambdas and whatever. But I noticed that this last time they kind of cut away before you could see anything sort of below the fold.
I noticed
like,
the same.
Oh, you've gotten wise to me, guys.
It's not how it was in the championship last year. Let's just say that.
Yes. I mean, again, it's possibly, one of the perils of publishing all my secrets on my YouTube channel. It doesn't take them long to figure out what I'm doing. So I'm just, one small thing, and then I want to kind of switch direction a little bit. But the small thing is just, of the sort of two worlds of FMWC between the kind of esports and the financial modeling side. What's, do you guys have a favorite? Is there a sort of head versus heart there? Which one do you enjoy more? Which one do you recommend to friends or whatever?
I like the esports one better. Could be that I have performed better than that. I just started doing the financial modeling one this season. I think after the first 2 rounds are already complete. And it's a big change. I don't know if my attention span is just not that long because it's 2 hours instead of you get 30 minutes and then you're done, or what. But I don't think I manage my time as well. So I like the quick snippet and the fun, because my job is in finance. I like finance, I do. But it's nice to do something that's just completely different, and the gamified version of the esports method is I like it a lot.
Yeah, me too. I find the esports ones a bit more fun, like just the different types of cases that we get to solve. There's often like interesting games, card games, board games, and things like that. I also think it's a bit more accessible to people who are not of a financial background. So if people want to get involved in and learn Excel and just have a bit more fun with Excel, probably start with the Excel esports cases, or I guess it's not too expensive to just join the comp anyway, so you can always be part of that. But if you're more interested in actually training up your financial, like technical financial modeling skills, then definitely the FM World Cup is the way to go there. For that one, I mean, I do have a finance background as well, but not complete. Like, I don't completely work in finance, so there are some terms there that often trip me up. In the most recent round, I think they talked about like actual inflation or interest rates or something. And then
I had no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I mean, I know that that has appeared in my uni notes over a decade ago. But to know exactly how that works, like that's something that's not fresh in my mind. So those things I find a bit more challenging. But I mean, it's called Financial Modeling World Cup, so we can't really complain when it has finance in it. But yeah, for me, I think both are fun, but I do enjoy the esports a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
I'm the same. That it's where my heart, like, I've learned a lot and gained a lot from, training on the financial ones, but the esports are more fun.
they're flashier too. Like telling someone that you participate in esports is a lot more fun to explain, versus what you just do finance at work and then for fun after that.
Have I mentioned that I was on ESPN?
Yes, that's flashier. Yeah.
It's funny. There's a bit of a conversation going on in the live chat about the weird ways our brains worked. Oz said, "Would we agree to have an MRI to see how our minds work?" He gets the case early when he's a host. Says it takes him 30 minutes just to get what's what. We've got something exotic going on. There seems to
Yeah,
be
I know
a
my minds work weird.
Yep. There's definitely some sympathy for that perspective in the chat. So I'm curious. The sort of slight pivot I wanted to take is just we were talking a little bit about learning from it and doing it for technical training. I'm curious, like how much kind of career impact or real life impact has this stuff had for you guys, other than the obvious enormous street cred, and B, I guess however it's been for you, like what kind of career upside or limits on that do you see for other people doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'd say it's for me it's a little bit more of an indirect impact, and it's a good practice for those critical thinking and problem solving skills that can be applied across a wide variety of use cases. I actually do not currently in my current role use Excel quite as much as I might like. I don't think I've even opened it in the last 2 days. So as far as a direct impact, a little bit less where I sit currently, although earlier career was a much different story because I was, in Excel the entirety of my day. And so those skills at that point would have been a lot different. I think that regardless of whether you're at a place that uses Excel heavily or perhaps some of these other tools that are out there or different types of coding, like that logical thinking and approach to how you're building formulas is translatable, whether it's direct or indirect. So I think it's a lot of benefits there. And I think that apply to either, the esports where it's obviously kind of a unique set of formulas and functions that you're using, but the logical thinking and critical thinking pieces dive in, or the financial side where you might have a finance job. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, I think for me it's kind of similar. So it kind of goes both ways as well. So I think towards the beginning, well, in my first 10 years of my career, I used a lot of Excel, and that built up my Excel skills so that when I first started competing in these competitions, like I had a good solid base. But then it kind of goes back in terms of some of the problem solving skills that I practice here and the formulas that we use here are a bit different to the ones I'm used to using at work. But they can still be useful. So especially some of the newer functions like the array functions and those sorts and uniques and reduce and all those ones that exist these days. I have brought a few of them back into my work. I mean, so it's helpful. If I didn't know, if I didn't do the competition, I could still do my work. But maybe some of my spreadsheets might not be as efficient. In terms of so I think in terms of Excel skills, it kind of helps both ways. If you have a finance related job or any job that uses Excel a lot, then it's going to help you in the comp. But there will probably be some things that you learn in the competition that you can bring back to work. In terms of just being a bit more well known, and you can sort of say that financial modeling world champion or those sorts of things. It's probably indirect for me as well. So in my career, like my main qualification is my actuarial qualification, and I don't really go out to my clients all the time saying, oh, I'm financial modeling world champion and those kind of things.
Don't
You don't put that like top of your resume, that's number one.
It's on there, but it's not number one. But there are some clients or some situations where it does add, it does bring something. So there was one particular project a couple of years ago where I had a client that wants something built in Excel and they want it fast. And so I'm kind of the perfect person to work on that job. So that helped in that situation. But in most situations, I guess it also depends on your job as well. Some jobs may see this and then see, okay, that's a really important thing. Whereas if your career is not as tied to Excel or financial modeling, then I guess the career impact is also a bit less.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point you made, Brittany, about like, well, I guess you kind of did as well, Andrew, about like, early career versus late career, the impact is pretty different. Like, I first entered Model Off, I guess, when I was an associate, like, I don't know, in the first kind of 5 years-ish of my kind of working career. And like at that stage, like I think when you're at that kind of, associate or sort of general junior person level, it's like that's a skill people are very interested in hiring an associate. It's not exactly front of mind when you're thinking of hiring, a VP or a director or a partner or whatever. And so like I remember like when I got to the finals of Model Off as an associate, I got a whole bunch of headhunter inbounds being like, hey, we can get you a job, just all this cool modeling stuff. And then the next year I won it, but I was a VP and the interest was massively less because I think it's not. It's like, you're a VP now. We'll get an associate to do the model.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of a general expectation that you kind of move away from Excel as you get more senior. I have actively defied that in my career, but I see it happen to most people.
I try to find opportunities to still bring it in. I did get to throw a dynamic array in one of my Excel workbooks. Just it was not as impressive for what it was used for. Like I need a spreadsheet. Like let me go dig in and have some fun. I try to bring in something every once in a while or find an excuse to dig into somebody's spreadsheet or workflow or something.
Yep. I mean, I guess the sort of reputational side of it is probably, in some ways, is probably less important for you guys because you've got real jobs. But for me as a freelancer, it's like I still get kind of unsolicited inbounds every now and again from people who are just like, the internet told me that you're really good at Excel, so can you help us with this thing? Like, yes, I can help you with this thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a different perspective there. Although I think I've gotten some good street cred at my company. Lots of fans were watching. As I think they had shared it in our company intranet that it was happening. So had some folks, the people who were eyeing me for days afterwards going, caught your competition or caught the replay. So it was fun. Got my 5 minutes of fame.
Love it. I mean, you definitely, like, you seem to have an enthusiastic fan base in, like, I look in the LinkedIn comments or the video comments or anything, there's always a good crowd cheering for Brittany.
Yes, I've been surprised that many people care.
So one specific question from the chat, which is, Will asked, could anyone speak to the value of knowing VBA in particular for real world finance applications? He's a recent secondary school graduate interested in IB as a career.
So it can definitely be very company specific, but I definitely used a lot of VBA in my early career. A lot of my very early spreadsheets were all very VBA oriented. So definitely has a special place in my heart as far as that knowledge. And depending on the company and organization that you're in, that may translate to other tools, but the coding piece of it is a skill set that's very much in need.
Yeah, I think so too. So VBA, I think maybe just in the world of Excel these days, maybe there's a bit less need for VBA just with more powerful functions that you can do outside VBA. But there are still some things that you probably want to use VBA for to automate things. And also it's the whole coding mindset. So if you learn how to code in VBA, you learn how to think, how do I solve a problem using code? And then you can code in other languages. You just have to learn the syntax in another language and you can probably apply a lot of the fundamental coding skills that you picked up when you learn VBA. Or I guess it can go both ways as well. If you learned another language, then you might pick up VBA a bit faster than someone else. But VBA is one of the easiest ones to learn because you can just go record macro and then do things in Excel and then read the code. And usually, if you read the code, it should be pretty obvious, like what it's actually trying to do. You might go, range something dot select, or that obviously that's selecting a range A1 or something. So yeah,
I'm
it's
pretty
probably
sure every VBA code I've ever written has started with a record macro.
yeah.
And then
Same.
lots of Googling. Lots of Googling.
Either, yeah, I was going to say either with recording macro or with Googling. Always, always the Googling. Like it's funny. I mean, there's a few comments in the chat telling people to, you know, learn Power Query first, then VBA, which I have some sympathy with. I think Power Query is great, but and again, to Brittany's point, it's like it's quite job specific. But like in my job, I do a lot of reporting, so you know, having a handful of lines that can say, you know, run this, like update this dashboard page for each of these, you know, 50 teams, and then turn it into a PDF and then send an email with the PDF as an attachment with a handful of lines of VBA is like very, very, very impactful if your job has any relevance for, you know, sending out 50 emails with 50 PDFs of a dashboard, but many jobs don't. And equally, if you're you know, spending a lot of time data wrangling, which, you know, even if that's not your kind of primary job, you probably are, then I'm a big fan of learning Power Query. And Eric points out ChatGPT is great at VBA. That was also my thought, Andrew, when you were saying about like you just have to learn the different syntax. Like these days, I'm not even sure you have to. Just like write the thing you want in VBA and then say, "Hey, ChatGPT, turn this into Python," and it'll be like, "Here you go," and it's probably right. Hopefully you know enough to figure out if it is actually right, but you know.
Yeah, I think it's where certain other skill sets start to come into play. It's like, hey, can you logically put out a prompt that gets what you need, or logically put out a prompt that you can write code or formulas for? Can you then properly document what's happening with that so it is something that can be revisited and updated and maintained over time? And then, can you build out some effective level of testing to make sure that you can gain comfort that whether you wrote something or somebody else wrote something or ChatGPT wrote something, that you are getting the end result that you want. So it starts to tie into some of those other skill sets that are vitally important, as important or more important in some cases as the actual technology of can you write the code or can you build a formula in Excel, is can you do all the stuff around that makes a valuable work product.
Yep, that makes sense. A comment from Harry, who is, I think of as much more a real programmer than me, but also knows a lot of VBA. But he said he would start with another language before VBA because the IDE and the compiler makes it easier to learn, which is an interesting point. VBA is, in some ways, not the most user-friendly to learn as your first programming language. But on the other hand, it is a very popular one. And I guess
think it was
these days we
first for
should
me, followed by SQL.
I mean, I guess if you're, especially for whoever that person was, I think it was Will, who's the secondary school student, you might want to learn Office scripts rather than VBA because, that's where the world is going, and they're, that's the kind of thing that they're building more of now. But then, can you create a blue screen of death with Office scripts? No, you can't.
And what fun is it? You cannot crash your computer or freeze it up.
So I have one other very important question to pull out from the chat. Lorenzo asked, Brittany, do you have your name on the back of the t-shirt or some nickname?
I have a nickname. Let's see if we can get to show up with the blurred background. So it says Mama Koala. Can y'all see that?
Yeah.
So Koala has been my husband's nickname for me. We've also our first child. We kind of have nicknamed our baby Koala, so I'm Mama Koala. So went with that.
There's also some general love in the chat for the fact that you're appropriately attired for an esports tournament.
Gotta get my usage out of the jersey, so trying to wear it for every competition and every opportunity. It makes sense. It's between this or the T-shirt that says it's a beautiful day to make a spreadsheet. Gotta have your Excel garb.
Love it. I've still got a mug that that my workmates got me in my first model off final. It's just like sum of D:IM because I'm known as Dim. But it's like little nerdy in joke that I love to find an excuse to drink from.
On camera, right?
Oh, of course. All right. Well,
Jim, do you have one of these jerseys? Because I bought some too, but they didn't arrive in time for when we were doing the recording for the ESPN show, so I didn't have it on back then.
I do not have one, although I guess, you know, if we're all rocking up to Vegas, then we'll have to coordinate, make sure we have different colored ones.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, I guess
What
we're
color is yours,
pretty
Andrew?
much.
I've got a yellow one because I'm
Okay.
Australian. And, yeah, I got a green one as well, but yeah.
Nice. All right. So I guess there's probably a red one.
I
Although
think so. Like all four of the main colors, I think.
Yeah, yellow, green, red, blue. Yeah.
although if you've got a non-green one, maybe I'll get a green one. I can be, you know, represent Ireland in there. All right. Well, we've hit the hour, and since we're in such an odd mix of time zones, I do want to, you know, be respectful of your guys' time, whether you need to, you know, get to work or get home or get wherever you need to get. But thank you to everyone for coming along and joining. It's good good chat. Good to get to pick both of your brains.
Yeah, thanks for
Always
organizing. It's
always
great to
interesting.
chat.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully we'll actually see you guys in person in Vegas in a few months.
Yeah.
Sounds
All righty.
good.
All right, hang on. Let me see if I can find the, oh, there it is. Boom. End stream, end. All right.
Nice.
Yes.